everyone, it's Andre Owens back with Comic Book Hobo and Cosmic Mutiny. I've got my partners David Lyle Johnson and Doc Bastard from Hollywood Afenders here again. And Hollywood Afenders is really like a love story to LA, the way La La Land was, in the sense that David and I lived in Hollywood for a long time. I know Doc Bastard was somewhere down here in the Southland at some point. I'm not revealing his not whereabouts because I don't know who he is. But we Hollywood Afenders is our love letter to Hollywood, in the way we see it, it's so cleaned up now and everything. But there was a time when Hollywood Boulevard looked like New York circa 1979, and it really wasn't that long ago. So it was really a different time in hand. And Hollywood Afenders is our way of exploring that world in in an absurdist way. And to make a comment on the greater media and how it deals with stories about different groups of people. For instance, I think that the media itself tends to glorify the loudest person in the room, and sometimes that's not the most appropriate thing for subject matter or whatever. I mean, Doc Bastard, what are your thoughts about the greater media and its responsibility to entertain, but to not be, shall we say, dictatorship, fascist with their power?
In country, we will only have one channel, and it only have one person basically playing all movies from the year 1987. It was the only movie we were able to get. So basically, one person would play all roles in all the movies that we gotten from 1987 because of all the sanctions that were put upon us for reasons that I will not speak of, but I am definitely against. I believe, since I've been in the United States of America, or I like the United Cinema, because the only thing America has been able to produce of products to the rest of the world is culture. It has not been able to produce anything of actual real value, but just entertainment. And it has basically put the entire world under spell, for the most part. The rest of the world is always trying to catch up to America's imagination. And mind you, I will be honest with you, it is not much to talk about. The imagination of America is very pathetic at best. It has only been able to clone it only keeps cloning old things. It has not made anything technically new. It has not even tried to experiment or explore anything that is unknown. It does just continue to try to capture big time money. And it shows lack of development. It shows there's the retardation in imagination of country, of United States. There's not much to, like, everything you see now is just the remake of remake, or some type of like extinction of something old, or something that existed, but now with cultural new person now. Like, now we put black person, now we put black lady, now we put native person, or we put different person of different race in the same fucking movie. It's the same movie, but now with face that looks like you. I see this is like a problem in country, in the United States.
Well, which leads me to talk to you, David, as someone that's originally outside of the comic book world, but knows cinema really well. What are your feelings toward the oversaturation of superheroes, or do you feel there's not an oversaturation, that you're getting enough? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily like an oversaturation or just a saturation issue in general. In my opinion, I think it's more like they just a lot of the risk taking, with like the smaller budget films is really like tightened up. Like they're not, like you were like Doc was saying, like maybe in the 90s and around that period, maybe even early 2000s, like when everybody was making anything, like it didn't have to go through all of these channels of like there's all these check marks before we say yes, we'll even read the script. Now I think it's a little bit more like they want proven entities. They're remaking either a movie or an IP or what have you, but they're like just the risk taking is gone unless you've got somebody attached to your project already. Those are the one or two that slip through that are like, because there are still like there's still like a couple of interesting new ideas that come out. It's just not as often as it used to be, I think.
Yeah, well, I think we've reached the point where the mainstream Marvel and DC type, the Disney and Warner Brothers movies are such the same. Like like the doc was saying, they're just interchange different parts within, which can work. I'm not, obviously it works and they make a lot of money and whatnot. But like you were saying, David, it does lead to stagnation. And one of the things that that I like to talk about when I talk about structure or film or of scripts or whatever is a very simple thing of what's your story about? You know what I mean? What is your story about, and what is it versus the plot? Because they're two different things. And often, people want to reinvent the wheel so much with their story that they lose sight of the simple basics of the story. I mean, you know what I mean? You can tell a story like boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl, and you can tell that story in any environment. That could be in our Hollywood Afenders universe. That could take place in that, and that could be this very simple story. Of course, the plot on top of that would be something different. But
right.
The story itself is very simple. And I think what happens with a lot of modern films or modern superhero films in particular. So I'm going to specifically, because it's not just modern comic book films. There's a lot of really good comic book films being made that aren't just superhero films. But modern superhero films are so cookie cutter. Like the doc was saying, that it takes away from the strength of the if you don't know what your story is, it's hard just to watch a plot move forward constantly.
Yeah, I think Marvel kind of found their lane and they're not really getting out of it. Like they people responded to it and they're still responding to it. They feel like they're in for like the larger. I think they're probably even going to keep the people who aren't even necessarily that into it anymore, but they're still. I want to see what happens in the larger story. They were really smart to like have that huge, wide-scaping storyline and inform people about it ahead of time so that they know there's more coming down the pipe. They know, and that's the other thing is like at least they're still doing all of their movies or the majority of them maybe that they said they're going to do. Like you have some of these streaming services who are doing their own stuff and they'll put out a season or maybe two and then just decide to pull the plug because the numbers weren't what they wanted. They may not be bad, but they're not what they, I don't know that. Yeah. I don't really. I think it's like I guess there's a lot of different things that go into that, but I feel like a lot of shows in that sense don't get.
Doc Bastard, I know we were talking off camera a bit about this, about the push for forced diversity, not really forced diversity, but in the sense that there's a thought of we have to fill an agenda that I don't tend to agree with that it's an agenda personally, but I understand that it comes across from in that way. So what do you see in the difference between the MCU and the Marvel comic book world? Where do you see this change that happened?
Well, I tend to see that there is a lot of attempts of course correction. So, they're trying to correct in their, own minds, or as they say it to us, that they're trying to correct mistakes made in past. And I see maybe they believe this, but in the end, it's pathetic because it's not. As a person of color, whatever color you think I am, do not worry. It seems that we're only getting handouts. We're only getting, this is not something we've created. This is something that, was created for us. So we can just keep our mouth shut or, we can, be involved or included into party. I find that pathetic. And, I see, for one, I see the comic superhero universe, omniverse, whatever bullshit they sell to you today is more so a, attempt to create mythology for the rest of the world to follow. This is like the last stand of United States as superpower. We have nothing of value, so now we have left is to sell our mythological goods and services, which is like, look at ridiculous superhero films. look at ridiculous, oh, look, we are like, we say, oh, we are like for feminist under like beliefs, but basically we just create patriarchal feminism. We talk about that we are here that we're against, racist power structure, but then you see those who are now on top with, different phenotype from the original bastards to do the exact same actions of original bastards. Right. So like nothing has changed. One thing I always say is that we do not want you to join table. We want you to go and flip table over and burn it to ground.
Right.
This is the old thing that we used to do in our country. Mind you, we do not have tables anymore due to the fact that we flip tables and burn them all to ground. But the idea that maybe I'm taking off course this topic, but I do believe that a lot of people, like they go in and say, I want to have a seat at table. I don't need you to have seat at table. I need you to burn table because table is problem. Table, you become to humanize enemy when you are sitting next to enemy, and then you become enemy, and then you start to justify actions of enemy. And I do not care for this anymore. This is why sanctions again were put on country, but for a completely different, for similar reasons, but not entirely.
Interesting.
But when it comes to when you see these movies that they come out from United States, they usually play on the principles of how would you say, just distraction. They do not, like, Earth is on fire. There is droughts everywhere. There is lack of water, rivers drying out. No one's going to probably have enough in very near future. And we see, for the most part, most people mainly talk about movie and how one group is angry that certain changes were made from comic book to movie, and the other group is complaining that one group is sexist, and then the other group is like, you have to go back and forth complain, which is really just distraction from collapse of the entire planet. Earth dying now. There will not be Earth later. And we spend time arguing and bitching and complaining and going on and on about why this movie is not exactly like comic book. And then the alterations are usually to play a long agenda to basically, as they say, live long enough, do not live long enough to become enemy. Like the people that were once complaining are now the enemy at some degree. It's like, you do the same shit that you complain about. What difference does this make? Unless I will rest my case.
No, that was a very good case you made. I agree with some of it. I disagree with others, but that's not neither here nor there because you made an excellent argument in your favor. I will say that it's like it's like what Ray Against the Machine said. F the G rides on what the machines that are making them. And I think, it's still appropriate. But like what you said, I won't get into my particular politics too much, but let's just say that, the means of production should be in certain hands and not in the grasp of the few.
Yeah. Yeah, you're saying the change needs to happen at the top, not just like the outcome, not like the whatever they're pumping out at the final product.
Well, it's like burn top.
Right. Well, it's like, going back talking about diversity and forced diversity and whatnot in those situations, it goes back to the Project Greenlight thing with Matt Damon. When he got in trouble for saying it didn't, to him it didn't matter who was behind the camera. And it's like you obviously miss it completely.
Yeah, that's the story.
Without these people, without us three together made Hollywood Afenders, and it wouldn't have been what it was without each one of our inputs, where we come culturally from to create this really cool thing.
Exactly.
I would have never been able to do this on my own. I would have, without you. And I know, David, you and I were so inspired by Doc Bastard's of original designs that it really made us write a lot better.
I do not want to say. I apologize. I do not mean to interrupt you. I do not say that there's a problem with having people, a diverse group of people behind cameras making decisions and whatnot. What I am complaining about is that the diversity has same mentality as people that originally created problem. There is no diversity in thought. There's no diversity in mind. There's everyone on same table, the table of where they humanize enemy and they become enemy. What I complain about is diversity in thought, diversity in practice, not the fact that everyone just looks different. You need to not only look different, but also think differently.
But I wonder how much of that is, you know, the decision of who's putting the money into it. If it's because from what I understand, it's the same people who always put the money into it. They don't care how they make the money as long as they're making money, and they're going to go with whatever the winds of change are, so to speak, as long as it doesn't, you know, screw up the numbers too much. You know, if they, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting subject, and I think Doc Baxter makes really great points about, you know, about this. I mean, look, you know, we're in late stage capitalism, and this was talked about what would occur when, you know, money becomes a commodity unto itself. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that, like you're saying, David, the people that are putting the money up will be the ones demanding the effects of the show.
Yeah, because I mean, they're going to fire the director if they don't like the message that they're putting out, or if, you know, they're going to fire their writer and get a new writer to, you know, keep the message of the story, but make this happen, make that happen. You know, like, I feel like that's a lot of what happens. You're getting like the third handed down translation of whatever the original story may have been, whether it's the same writer or whether it's a different set of writers. You know, it's like, if you're that original writer and you don't play the game of, you know, acting on the notes that were given to you, then you're going to get replaced. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of that happens, a lot of watering down from higher up.
It definitely does. You know, corporate always has, you know, final word in these corporate movies. But anyway, look.
Also, there's also a lot of nepotism. Like we say that there's diversity, but in truth, it's just nepotism. No one new is coming in. It's just everyone's just the descendant of the last person that was in. Like, we have to take away this like, oh, we want diversity. No. You just have nepotism. Let's just be honest. And then, you know, there's the other actions of like, we talk about, like, you know, there's this, you know, money is important. This is the real reason anyone's in there. And they're not going to necessarily, they will say whatever, they will give us whatever token, like, you know, coins. They just like, oh, here, we'll give you this token, this and token that, and we'll tokenize whatever the hell you want, as long as you shut up and give us money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was all this stuff started as commercials, you know, for one thing or another in the beginning. You know, everything was just to sell a product, you know, like movies or long form commercials, you know, just throw in these things or this message or whatever.
If you're not invited to Bukkake party, do not expect anything to flow down your way, as they say in country.
And with that, I'm gonna have to let everyone go. It's been, once again, great talking to David L. Johnson and friggin' Doc Bastard, who has euphemisms out his ass, it seems. Oh, out his ass. Anyway, it was good to talk to you guys. Next time we'll discuss something maybe a little more light, maybe a little heavy. We'll see what happens. Until then, Andre Owens telling you goodbye.